So, welcome everybody to today's edition of CESI Talks. CESI Talks is a series of interviews in the frame of our WEEP project, which aims at bringing, let's say, European but also international key players, key decision makers and their activities closer to our members and their affiliates. And today I have the particular pleasure to welcome Oliver Denk. Oliver Denk is senior economist at the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Oliver, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oliver, you have been analyzing the labor markets for quite a while and the development also. What were the impacts of the pandemic and how is the situation in Europe currently?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the pandemic was, of course, a massive shock to the labor markets and also to the labor markets in Europe. There were the two factors that dampened the shock, which was the move to the digital workplace, so teleworking, that helped a lot, and a really decisive policy response by governments and central banks as well. And the result that we saw in Europe then was basically a very small decline in employment. So in fact, at the peak of the crisis, our data say the employment declined only by about 3% in the European Union and the Euro area as well. So this is really small given the shock of the crisis. And in fact, right now, employment is back to where it was before the crisis. So a 3% decline, and now we are back to where we were. But this does not mean that everything is fine, of course. So there are still a number of challenges that people, companies, and governments are grappling with. One is that employment is back, as I said, as before the crisis, but a good number of people, like segments in the labor market, were more affected than others. So that includes people on precarious jobs, on temporary contracts, young workers as well. So this is really a challenge. And the other one is that the crisis was, of course, also a reallocation shock of workers during the crisis, but also now. And so, the challenge is to organize somehow this reallocation of workers from shrinking firms and sectors to expanding firms and sectors. And, we see it very clearly with shortages of workers in certain segments of the labor market, for example, in healthcare, but also in other frontline occupations that are highly exposed to COVID. So there are a number of challenges that come out of the crisis, of course, and all this against the backdrop of the ongoing and intensifying megatrends, digitalization and AI, the aging of the population, and climate change as well. So lots on the agenda for policymakers.
And you mentioned, for instance, precarious work, a typical work that leads me straight to the question, of course, also of the quality of work. If you say 3% of decline, which is less than the expected shock, I think you were also expecting at the OECD, yes. And we are back to normal. How is it almost to normal? How is it generally speaking, with the quality of work, and what are the tools at our disposal? How could I say to which is very important for us trade unionists, to guarantee that it's not only about jobs or saving jobs, but also about quality jobs.
Absolutely, yes. I think if we think about the tools and the policies that are needed now, there's of course a broad range of policies that needs to be addressed, but still the number one priority, in my view, and also people I'm working with here at the OECD, is still vaccination, actually. This is the number one priority. It's important, so important for each individual to be safe at work, and for the others to be safe at work. And actually, increasingly, it's important for being even allowed to work, as governments and countries think about introducing restrictions to the workplace, to access the workplace. So this is really the number one priority. In terms of employment, of course, in the context of the crisis and quality employment, I would say another key area is what goes under the heading of active labor market policies. So job search support naturally, but also training, training for people who are out of work, people who are still, some of them are on short-time work schemes. They are still active in some countries. And also for people within the firm. And I think this is also where the social partners have a role to play to organize and support this training within firms and for other workers as well. I think another area that is really important to think about is there have been so many extraordinary crisis measures that were taken, but actually now more and more we are thinking about rolling back these measures. A lot of them have been rolled back, but a lot of decisions will have to be taken about what else needs to be taken back. And but another related question is what should not be taken back. So some of the measures might, you might want to think about making them permanent. Some of the good ones, one example would be, again, the short-time work schemes or related schemes under the heading of job retention schemes. Some countries had them, they just scaled them up. Others introduced them in a rather ad hoc fashion. And, these countries, one question is, should they become permanent? And another issue is social protection gaps that became evident. So one key example here is for the self-employed, sometimes with no access to unemployment benefits or to sick leave. And this access has been extended during the crisis, but what should governments do going forward to include the self-employed more into the social protection schemes that have in place? So these are some of the tools and policies that are there that governments are currently thinking about and need to think about.
Mr. Denk, we look to the summer of 22. We project our thoughts into the month of June. We would like to have our summer days then, and we're looking forward to your cooperation on the occasion of this event too. If you look forward, what do you think? How will the labor markets have evolved? What are the mega trends? What are the expected trends if you look to June 22?
So my own expectations, and also actually it coincides with the baseline forecast by the OECD where I work, is that labor markets will continue their recovery throughout next year, so until the summer of next year. So you spoke about the days, the summer days we hopefully should be able to meet in the summer. Of course, there are a number of factors that play into our favor, like greater vaccination, greater immunization also through more infections, in fact, and a warmer weather. But clearly there are also large risks. There's still the pandemic. We don't know about new variants, so we're not sure. And the other risk to labor markets more broadly and the economies is inflation. I mean, to some extent, it's good, of course, for higher nominal wages, but you don't want to have it spiral out of control. And so this is really a question mark that is lingering at the moment over our economies and over our labor markets. But maybe I can, end this question on the note that, well, even if this turns out well in the respects that I mentioned, I think let's not forget how, we can say poor, I think, Europe's performance was in some respects before the crisis. I mean, we had real wages that were nearly stagnant for the past 15 years. So we looked at the data, it's on average in the European Union, it was 0.7% annually, the real wage increase over the past 15 years. In Greece, Italy, and Spain, workers today earn less than 15 years ago in real terms. I mean, this is really not good. So I think in terms of employment, we spoke about it before, we're getting back to where we were, or we are back to where we were. There are problems with employment, with patches of precarious work and, fears for young workers. But I think a real challenge is also the wage growth, so productivity and pay. And I hope that CESI Summer Days will also, provide a platform for discussing these issues on productivity and pay.
Anyway, a lot to do also, not only by politics or think tanks or international organizations, but also, as you mentioned, a lot to do for social partners to make sure these developments go into the right direction. Mr. Denk, thanks a lot. You take care of yourself, and I hope to see you soon at the latest at the Summer Days.
Thank you very much. Thank you.